Hello, all of you beautiful souls in the Women Helping Women Entrepreneurs community. It is so nice to be here tonight. It is turning into fall here in Boston. It's cold. I'm all cozied up in my sweater, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about some things that I think are some truths that I think it's really important that as we're going through the things we're going through in life to start to reconcile and to understand. So I would love for you to join me for this conversation. My name is Suzanne Goldstein. I have a company called Dare Human, and I am all about helping raising consciousness on this planet. Consciousness about how we see ourselves, how we recognize our own emotions and master our own emotions, how we activate our innovation and our creativity, how we learn to grow and strategize, all in the purpose of changing the world. And whatever your thing you want to change the world about is, I'm here to support that because I believe that it is going to be women who are going to make a mighty difference on this planet. So I'm happy to be here. Do me a favor as you're coming on, say hello in the comments. I'd love to know you're here. I see a couple of you bouncing on. It would mean a lot to me. So today the topic I wanted to talk about is what would MLK think? What would Martin Luther King Jr. think today? Now, I'm a white girl. I cannot tell you if he were alive today what he'd be thinking. But what I can do is I can look back at some of his writings and I can extrapolate from there of what I think we could think he might be thinking about. Because one of the things as being a white woman who does work around race and justice, around racial equity, and does work around social justice, and does work around gender parity, and does work around women's empowerment, what I know about all of these topics is that it takes a certain amount of self-awareness and emotional intelligence to go there. And depending on who you are and what you're looking to achieve in this world, the thing that we need to each wake up about is different. So for instance, if I was working with some men right now, and we were talking about gender parity, I would have to really talk to them about some of the unearned advantages that they would have as a man in this world, because especially here in the US, but also around the world, so much of the world has been constructed as a patriarchal society. So who's with me as I'm talking about this? I'd love to see your names and where you're coming in from. Because tonight I want to talk specifically about racial justice, and I want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. We all remember him fondly. Even if you're not from the US, he was an icon. He was a figure that we talked about as in mythic terms almost, and the fact that he was assassinated makes his stature as a mythical person even higher. It's pretty amazing what he was able to achieve in his short life. What does that have to do with us being good people? I mean, I think I'm a pretty good person. Do you think you're a pretty good person? I assume you think you're a pretty good person. I doubt you'd be part of a community like this if you didn't think you were a pretty good person. So what does that mean? And what does it mean right now in this era, in this time, when, you know, we're in a women's empowerment group here, we're all trying to rise up, we're trying to make money, we're trying to help people grow businesses. We're doing a lot of things that are for women of all backgrounds, all races, all cultures, all socioeconomic strata around the world. Like, this is powerful stuff that's happening here. And I think as we all interact with each other, we really do try to be good people. So what am I talking about? Like, how does this have to do with anything? So let me know if you're here. Say hi in the comments. I would love to greet you and, you know, understand what part of the world you're coming from so I could really tailor what I'm talking about to make sure that it rings true for you. But I want to go and start with a piece of the letter that Martin Luther King Jr. shared when he was in the Birmingham Jail in Birmingham, Alabama. The year was, I think, 1963. It was, hi, Loida. Oh my God, so nice to have you here. The year was 1963. as part of the work that Martin Luther King Jr. did, he ended up in Alabama to help do some work on voting rights and some of the other issues that were happening around the treatment of Black people in this country. And he was jailed as part of what happens when you are peacefully demonstrating. A lot of people back then ended up in jail. And he was responding to a letter that was given to him from some local Christian pastors. And so he tried to appeal to them from the point of view of also being a man of the cloth, of somebody who really believed that what he was appealing to them about, even though they were white and he's Black, that he was appealing to them as people who really taught from the Bible and what the Bible tells us. And I want to read a little portion. I have it up here so I don't get it wrong. He said that the greatest stumbling block to the Black persons, he used the word Negro, I'm going to use the word Black persons stride towards freedom, is the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, quote, I agree with you in the goals you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. This was such a powerful sentence, and I want to explore that with you today, because all of us think we're good people, right? I mean, I can't talk to a single white girlfriend who says, well, I'm a good person, like I believe in equality, I have Black friends. This is what people believe about themselves, and it's true, right? But there's a problem. And what I want to talk about here is the problem, because what happens is that white, moderate people, and what that means is not either side of the extreme polarity of politics in the US, but even in the world, white, moderate people are really so focused on keeping the peace and on not having things be tense, because they like order. They like to know that things that they can count on happening the way they expect them to happen, which in the US is based on this structure that is based on white supremacy. It was built for a certain group of people to have privilege over another group of people, right? So when the founding fathers formed the United States, some of them were slave owners, let's just be clear. And there is language in all of the documents that were written at the beginning of this country about how Black people were 3/5 of a human, women didn't have the right to vote. Like, the people who this was really for were white, straight men, tend to be wealthy men. Okay, so that's what it's for. So here we go, years and years later, we're still living in a world where a lot of these policies that grew up through this time period truly affected how systems and structures were set up in this country and beyond, because where the US goes, a lot of places follow. And you can go to China and see racism in China. You can go to Australia and see racism in Australia. You can go to the UK or Canada. You can go anywhere in the world and you can see racism. It happens. But when we're good people, we have a really difficult time believing and understanding that we're part of the problem. So how can Martin Luther King say that, again, I'm going to quote, white moderate people who are more devoted to order than justice? So what this means is that a lot of white people want to say, hey, you know, I support these. I'll put my little black square up on Instagram and say Black Lives Matter. And somehow that is supposed to be enough to feel like solidarity. Now, I'm a person who likes to push the envelope, and activism is a big part of my world, and I hope activism is part of your world. And whether your activism is helping women make more money, helping create more equity, taking care of our planet, whatever your activism is, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't want to activate a group of people about something. And Dare Human is all about that activation. It's all about daring ourselves to step out of our comfort to actually create change. So it's interesting because when we think we're good people, It means we don't do anything because we don't think we're part of the problem. It means that we sit on our laurels and we're like, I put up my black square on Instagram for Black Lives Matter, solidarity, yay, I'm it. That didn't change a single life. Didn't change a single law. It didn't change a single circumstance for a Black mom who has lost yet another Black son, or any other group of people that are marginalized in this country or in another country. Yvette says, hello, I'm Yvette from Venezuela, living in Ecuador. Sadly, everywhere is hate, but I know we are good because God created us. Thank you for sharing. You're so welcome. And you know, I am a big fan, a big believer in universe, God, light, love, whatever word you use for collective consciousness, a power that is greater than us as individuals that allows us to connect to source and in some cases channel amazing information that we get to share with the world. And that is one of the things that is a gift that I was given, is like, how can I channel what I know to show people a different way of being? And so what happens in this scenario, especially with white women, is that by no fault of their own, there has been a structure within which they've been kept super safe. I think about some of the early movies in the movie industry where there was always a white heroine who was being taken away and grabbed, think King Kong, by a big, hairy black man, ape, right? There was this ape that was stealing and kidnapping a white woman, and a lot of media back in those days was all about the purification of white women. The virginity of white women is what was protected. And that led us directly to things like Emmett Till being killed in 1955. Emmett Till was a young black man and he was in an elevator with a white woman at the same time. And that white woman got off of the elevator and said that he made a pass at her. And Emmett Till was beaten to death. And the reason you know about this story, or even if you don't, the reason I know about this story is because Emmett Till's very brave mother in 1955 decided she was going to host an open casket funeral, wake. And what happened is people could walk by and see this bruised and beaten body of her young son, who was completely pummeled to death because he was in the elevator with a white woman at the same time. And back then, and it still happens today, by the way, it's just not as blatant. Back then, a white woman accusing a black man of anything was the end of that black man's life. And a lot of that feels like it's not here anymore. But think about what happened in Central Park in New York just a couple months ago, when Amy Cooper was walking her dog, and her dog was not on a leash, and a black man who was dressed nicely and was with his binoculars birding, looking for birds, had a discussion with her about getting her dog on a leash because that's the law in the park, and she called the police. She dialed 911 and reported that a black man was being offensive to her. Now, this is a black man in Central Park who was looking at birds. We're still in Emmett Till territory in 2020. Amy Cooper has branded herself for the rest of her life as the woman who called the police on a birder. Loida says, love your passion and I feel your courage in sharing what you believe. Thank you. Listen, this stuff is hard. Margaret says shame. Janine says so tragic. And it is. And this is what I mean by we're good people. Because unless we are stepping forward and actually trying to get involved and trying to change hearts and minds and trying to change legislations and trying to change what is happening, the pattern will continue and continue and continue. So it's not okay to just be a good person. I think if MLK was alive today, he'd be like, shame on you white women. Shame on you white women because you are not participating in the change. You're beneficiaries of it. I like to tell this story if I was walking down the street in my neighborhood in Boston and I felt like there was someone a little bit dodgy nearby, it didn't matter what color they were, it just didn't feel safe for some reason, if I saw a police car rounding the corner, I would be like, yay, the police are here. I'm safe. I'll be fine. And if I was a Black woman walking through my same neighborhood, feeling dodgy about something, and a police car turned the corner, that woman would be like, oh shit, I could end up dead at the end of this. This is true today. So we're not talking about back in the 1960s or the 1950s or 1865 when abolition happened. We're not talking about the beginning of slavery. We're talking about today. And for all the people who constantly say to me, my grandparents didn't have slaves, my great-grandparents didn't have slaves, my great-great-grandparents didn't have slaves, what does this have to do with today? I'd say to them, look around at the prison system, which today is using Black men and brown men to build some of the items that you use in your everyday life, because the prison industrial complex really was replacing slavery as a system as we came out of Jim Crow, a terrible period and blight on this country that followed some of the things that happened in the 1920s and 1930s. So why am I so passionate about this? Margaret says, I know all about this. I was born in South Africa and I am blonde. You get it. You understand your privilege. And we have to make a difference. Because if we don't stand up and say this is wrong and women start demanding something happen, not because we're white women and we have power, it is with sisterhood, by listening and supporting the Black women who are leading these movements, right? We white women are not going to step in and go, we have the solution, we're in charge. No, we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is we're going to get ourselves educated. We're going to bring it home so that we can be part of the change. Because quite frankly, sitting in our beautiful homes or your apartment or wherever you are, building an online coaching business to help people lose weight, which is great, and I could use to shed about 10 COVID pounds right now, or to help people make more money, which is also great, and I love teaching people how to do that, or teaching people emotional intelligence. This is all amazing stuff. Don't get me wrong. But there is a structure and a system that is going on in this world right now that needs white women more than ever to be part of the solution. So I think MLK would be disappointed in us. I think that he'd be saddened to know that change still hasn't happened. And even though John Lewis, the famous congressman who marched in Selma with MLK, who died recently, but was able to see the first Black president in the US come into office, the tragedy of it is that that moment, having a Black president, caused more racial divide in this country than ever before. We thought, oh, it's a post-racial world. We have a Black president. It's not true. We now have a president who is actually pushing to teach what he's calling patriotic education in the US because he wants to change the government system of education. You can read about this on my page. He wants to change the government system of education because he believes that teaching the history of Black people in this country is, as he said, abusive. He thinks it's child abuse. These problems are deep. And so my question to you is, are you willing? Are you daring? Are you curious and courageous enough to get educated so you can be part of the solution? I designed this brand new program. It's called The Girlfriend's Guide to Unpacking White Privilege. And it is specifically taking white women through the awakening journey at a deeper level so that you can understand what white culture is. Why does it exist? How did it become dominant? How does it affect everything you do every single day? The fact that I was due here at 8 o'clock because I had the slot at 8 o'clock tonight. Timekeeping, the way we do it in the US, is white culture. That didn't happen with the indigenous people that lived here before, or African people before they were kidnapped and brought here. There are so many components of white culture that are pervasive through everything we do. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about white women's tears and what it means when women get so overwhelmed with the tragedy that's going on every day for Black families that they actually center the issue around themselves and about how sad they are, and they personalize it as opposed to making it about the people who've truly been wronged. We're going to talk about unconscious bias and how we all have it. I have it, you have it. Every single person on the planet has it. We're going to do an assessment from Harvard, a free assessment that helps you understand where you have opportunities to grow when it comes to bias in your own world. And we're going to be using movies and media as a way of really understanding how this stuff infiltrates everything we do. And then lastly, the third week is going to be about structural racism. So how did this white culture and this bias come together to create a structured racism that literally is replicating slavery within the prison system so that corporate America, capitalism, can thrive off of free labor? And it's really scary that this exists. And we good people don't want to look at it. We want to look away because it's way too uncomfortable. But I want to invite you to come with me on this journey, because we invest in programs that we think are going to help us make money. But do we ever invest in our world to make sure our kids grow up in a place where they feel like they can breathe and see and heard? So, Sherry, to answer your question of making money off of it, I'm actually donating a large percentage of the profits to a nonprofit organization that supports women of color building entrepreneurial ventures. That's how I am dealing with that. I have to make a living. It's my time. I designed a brand new program, but there are scholarships to the program, and there is a percentage of the revenue that is going directly to nonprofits. So yeah, and I think it's a legit question. And the other question that I get a lot is, why are you as a white woman doing this? Black people should be the ones that are teaching about race and bias and all that stuff. And I agree with them. I agree with them wholeheartedly. And I don't do any unconscious bias training. I don't do any of that kind of structural racism training work. I only work with white people to inform them, to get them to wake up so that they can partake in deeper trainings. That's my role in this. I'm very clear about where I stand, and that is because I've worked alongside of Black women most of my career. From 2013 to 2017, I was the CEO of a diversity and inclusion consulting firm, partnered with a woman named Vernee Myers. Vernee is very famous for having said, diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. And I ran her company for 4 years and put her on the TED stage, and now she is the Vice President of Inclusion Strategy at Netflix, and she's really inside changing the culture of how we see media. So my job as a woman who supports the vision of Black women driving the movement is to bring more women, of white women, into the movement. That's my job. That's it. I don't desire to go further. It's not my place to go further. I'm very clear of the role I can play in this change. So I hope that answered your question, Sherry. So here's my invitation to you. I know I only have a couple more minutes, so let me know if you have any specific questions about it. We're going to start on Sunday, the 27th, and it's going to meet twice a week live. There's going to be 2 recordings a week. The homework will include readings and movies that you can see that we're going to talk about and unpack together. And the idea is for you to walk away from this being an informed participant in the conversations, so that when you're reading the newspaper, or you're seeing something on the news, or you're watching something online, or you're engaging with someone, you have a sense of where this all comes from. And so there's a link right above if you're interested in coming with me on this journey. I will say one other thing, and that is that I did a free program. I have a personal value that for every paid program I offer a free program. So there's a bunch of free programs, both on my personal page and in my group, Dear Human. I did a free program last week called Friends in a Time of Racial Unrest, and it is a story of my own awakening and the Black women along the way who helped me. I was called a Christ killer when I was 5 years old, and it set me on a trajectory of otherness my entire life. So I tell that story, and then I talk about how we as white women can be better friends to our friends of color during the time. So if you want a link to that, you can either run over to my personal page, or you can come and to my inbox and you can ask me a question there. Sherry, that's the price. Absolutely. It was $9.11 in early bird, but it went up in its final price. And it is worth much more than that. We're going to go so deep in these 3 weeks. It's going to be incredible. And I'm really looking forward to the women who are really wanting to invest in this topic. This is not something that you take lightly. This is not something you gamble on. This is for someone who's really ready to be part of the change. And the last thing I'll say is this. If you're growing a business online and you're not thinking about the ways that being diverse and inclusive and creating belonging in your programs, in your services, in the people you hire, in the vendors you select, you're missing a huge part of the population. Not only is it an imperative for businesses to learn how to diversify and be more inclusive, it's actually better outcomes. It has been proven, there's a huge McKinsey study that was done, that the bottom line revenue of companies that hire diverse talent has been shown to bring the overall revenue of the company up. And that is because of the belief and the proven science that by having diverse minds in the room, you get better solutions. So I am giving you a lot of information. There's a lot to go through. I am available in my inbox if you have questions. I invite you to come on this journey. And if not, I invite you to go take my free masterclass, because we all need to start somewhere. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for your support, for your challenging questions. I like it all. And I look forward to seeing you here online and every single day on my Facebook page. For the next 30 days, I am doing something called Truth and Dares. It's Universal Truths and Extraordinary Dares. And I am going to be live every single day at 5:30 Eastern on my personal page, talking about stuff. Loida says, I believe in you and what your heart desires. Thank you for not only being the change, but creating something for others to possibly be the change too. Loida, I love you for saying that. Thank you. Listen, I've gotten attacked so much in the past couple weeks since I launched this program, and that's okay. People have a lot of feelings about this topic, right? It brings up a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. I've gotten hate mail. I've gotten all kinds of nastiness. And you know what? I just think I must be onto something, right? So if you think this is right, if this is part of where you want to go in your life and in your business, come join me. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again here soon. I hope you have a great rest of your night.